of the controversy surrounding Daniel Abt's exit from the team bearing his name, one suggestion has been that Audi was cynically looking to get rid of him all along anyway and were handed a convenient excuse to do it early. This is a theory I partially buy into, but let's back up. Now, the argument hinges on the fact that dropping Abt merely for trolling the race at home challenge, in which Formula E drivers compete with each other virtually by having a sim racer impersonate him, seems excessively harsh, and it is. Now, my instinct tells me it's more just a knee-jerk reaction from Audi preempting negative publicity associated with perceived cheating, but the theory has certainly sparked a dialogue about Abt's ability as a driver, with some leaning towards the view he is not up to Formula E standard and is only there because his family run the team and so on, hence Audi wanting to be rid of him. Now, this is an attitude I might have been sympathetic to at one time. Abt, like Di Grassi, had been with the team since Beijing and is in fact one of only 4 drivers to have contested every Formula E race thus far. But whereas Di Grassi was a multiple winner and a championship contender in both seasons 1 and 2, Abt still had relatively little to show for himself in the same amount of time. However, his more recent campaigns have seen more of his potential on display. The series' first visit to New York in season 3 saw him lead in the opening stages before dropping out with battery management issues later on. The following season, he would inherit the lead on his birthday in Hong Kong when Eduardo Mortara spun with just 3 laps remaining, only to be disqualified because of an administrative error on the part of the team. That's a whole story in itself I'll revisit in a later video. Audi's first season as a fully fledged manufacturer was a strange one. They started out as favourites with arguably the most competitive car in the field. However, a string of technical misfortune blighted the 2 cars, with reigning champion Di Grassi bearing the brunt of it. That left teammate Abt to pick up the baton, which he did admirably, finally achieving 2 victories in Mexico and Berlin. And while yes, you could put that down to a car advantage, his performance at Berlin showed he could genuinely beat Di Grassi in a straight fight. And this is another thing to bear in mind. The biggest point of reference for any driver is their teammate, and Lucas Di Grassi, Abt's only point of reference in Formula E so far, is one of, if not the greatest drivers there has ever been in the series, so even if he can come close to Di Grassi, that reflects well on Daniel Abt's ability. Now, Abt flew under the radar a bit in season 5 with only 2 visits to the podium. However, it's worth noting that in a season where consistency was in short supply, seemingly for the entire field, Abt only failed to get into the points on 2 occasions, awarding him a stealthy 7th place in the final standings, ahead of such drivers as Sam Bird and Andre Lotterer, who were considered title contenders at various times during the season. Aside from his performances on track, which I think have more than earned him a place on the grid, unlike those of a certain driver he'll be replacing, let's not forget the role he has played as an ambassador for Formula E over the years. Thanks to the whole racing at home scandal, we're now well aware of Abt's presence on YouTube, but I particularly want to draw attention to a comment left from his account on a video by Tomo F1 titled 4 Reasons I Can't Watch Formula E. It's a decent video which makes some valid, open-minded critiques of aspects of Formula E, including the fan boost and the sound, and Abt addresses each one. Now, one could cynically say it might have been someone from his social media team who did this, and yes, experience has taught us not to take every appearance of his name at face value, but given the enthusiasm Abt has expressed for Formula E and the fact he's now signed with a no-hope team just to keep himself on the grid, I can easily imagine him wanting to put in a good word for the sport he loves. Now, I mentioned earlier I believe there's some truth to the cynicism about Audi, and to clarify, if he was a multiple champion on the same level as, say, a Lucas Di Grassi or a Jean-Eric Vergne, the team would be more hesitant to drop him over such a relatively minor offence. But that isn't to say they were actively looking for an excuse to dump him or anything as simplistic as that. Behind the scenes, I'm sure it's a lot more complicated, and the full details will come out much later if they ever do. It remains to be seen whether Daniel Abt will be able to achieve anything with the Neo in Berlin, and given Oliver Turvey's record in the machinery, I wouldn't be too optimistic, but nonetheless I'm glad to see him returning, as while he may not be quite on the same tier as the likes of Vergne, Buemi or Di Grassi, he is nonetheless a great and underrated asset to the championship. You've been watching ReGen. Don't forget to subscribe for more analysis and anecdotes from Formula E and motorsport.